Hello, everyone. How are you? I am Violet Lee, your Tai Chi examiner. Well, some of you probably remember back a few months ago, I introduced you to Sifu Bill Donnelly. Hey, say hi, Bill, to everyone.
Hey, Violet.
Yeah, the reason, I interviewed him because he just published a book, Inner Secrets. And this book, I really enjoy reading it because it is Bill's lifetime experience, his knowledge, not only in the healing art of Tai Chi and Qigong, but also his understanding of the Eastern and Western philosophy. And he also include a lot of life stories into the book and make it very relatable. But at the same time, when I read his book, a lot of time I read a chapter, I put it down, and I have to kind of chew on it and then to think about it because it's quite profound. And I call this book is a string of pearls. And each chapter is like a pearl. It's very precious and very interesting. Of course, depends on how much time you want to spend on it and thinking about it. And sometimes also depends on your own practice. You may get things different out of it. And I personally purchased quite a few copies and gave to my students. And that time, because he's always busy, we could not, and besides, we really could not spend hours and hours and to discuss each of these pearls. And I left, something open. I said, "Hey, Bill, can you come back later on? We can talk some of the ideas you put in this book." And he's been very generous. And so today we have Bill back. And like I say, there are so many great ideas and concepts. And, for example, like say, something from nothing. What does that mean? And talking about yin yang in female and a path to excellence. So each of this, like I say, it's like a pearl. And today, I like to discuss one topic with him because I got that questions a lot myself. And it's called, is Tai Chi Chuan really a workout, right? Because people have that very stereotypical thinking when you work out and you sweat a lot and you're dripping wet, and that means you really have a good workout. And then for Tai Chi Chuan, and probably not that way. And the Tai Chi Chuan is slow. So a lot of people are wondering and questioning, is Tai Chi a workout? So, hey, Bill, I let you take over and talk about what do you think about this?
Well, thanks, Violet. It's great to see you again. And thanks for having me here. Inner Secrets, when I wrote it, one of the thoughts I had was, there were a couple things. First, what I was really trying to do was create a bridge from a practitioner who maybe understands the art to somebody who may not fully understand what it is that we're doing. And as I'm sure that you and maybe other teachers or practitioners on this podcast would agree with, we tend to, all talk to people who have never done Tai Chi before, and they have a total misconception about what it really is. And the most common thing that I hear is, oh, it's that slow thing that old people do in the park. And what I say to them is, I think you see that image a lot, especially when you see a poster for a Tai Chi person. And it's misinterpreted that Tai Chi is supposed to be done because you're old. And what I tell them is that that's not actually the correct message. The correct message is that that person grew old and is still vital because they do Tai Chi. And that was probably one of the more frequent conversations that I've had with people over the years.
So, Bill, sorry for interruption. How old were you when you first learned Tai Chi?
So I was about 35.
35. So you were not really old, but you're strange and picking up an old a person exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And even for me, honestly, my perception was exactly the same too. I was training in Trailer Foot Kung Fu 3 times a week, and then practicing when I was in class. And I would walk by the Tai Chi class all the time saying, I don't need to do that. Right. And so I avoided it. But what happened was I convinced someone that they should start learning martial arts, and because they weren't really, in shape yet, that maybe they should start with Tai Chi because, it's simple, right? It's easy. Anybody can do it, even you, even me. I'll do it as a warm up, and then I'll do the real thing after that. And so I took the Tai Chi class, and I felt amazing at the end of that class. And I would describe it as, about once a year, I would have a day where as soon as I woke up, everything was going to go right. I was very fluid in my thinking. I would say the right thing. I moved through the world with ease. And I loved those days. But it would only come about once a year. And when I started to train in Tai Chi, I started to realize, oh, that day can be accessed. And I started to really, get serious and train in it.
So
and
you're
then
saying, if I heard you correctly or interpret correctly, you're saying is once you start practicing Tai Chi, you have the feeling just like that once in a year before you had that feeling. But if you practice Tai Chi, you could always access that kind of feeling.
Right, exactly.
Sorry.
It's like a perfect day feeling, right? If you think about your perfect day, I would have this perfect day once a year spontaneously, right? It would just happen, and then the next day it would be back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to realize that there was something there. The other thing is that I was sore after, and I was surprised by that because I thought, it's going to be just these easy motions and nothing was really happening. But in fact, there was a lot that was happening to me physically. And so it woke me up. And I decided that there was definitely something more to this and that I should invest some time to train. And so I did. When I became a teacher, I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that Tai Chi was not going to be so simple, and so I would really, I would really make them work hard. And oftentimes, when I was teaching, if there was a female student, they would, eventually talk to their husband or boyfriend and convince them to come down, and it would be, this big burly guy, very macho, football player type, who's like, I'm only here because of her, and I'm gonna just get through this class so we can go, have lunch and do whatever we're gonna do. And I would then make it my mission to break them. And I would do all the deep stance work and all these things and watch their legs shake. And I got a lot of joy out of that, until my wife to me said one day, you're going to drive them away as opposed to inviting them in. And so maybe you should kind of ease up on that a little bit. It was good.
Well, yeah, it's very, very interesting. And people don't understand when we actually go slow, it's so hard. And I went to my teacher's training, Grandmaster Chen Zhenlei's training. And one day, it was supposed just a warm up. And Master Chen Bing, who is my teacher's son, he had us just do the silk reeling, one arm silk reeling, but he was going so slow, super slow. And then he was having us to do 5 minutes on one hand and then change to the other arm for 5 minutes. Oh my God. I have to tell you that was the longest 5 minutes I ever experienced. And my legs was burning. They were burning. And my heartbeat was going so fast. And a lot of times you think, it's so slow. There's no cardio. Wrong. My heartbeat was going really, really fast. And I tried to breathe slow, but it's getting very, very, very difficult. And you know me, I've been trained for 20-some years. And in general, I'm proud of myself, my own stand. I could go really, really low. And for most of the Tai Chi practice, I do like so-called medium stand. But oh my God, that's all I can say. It's just unbelievable. Sorry for.
Well, no, and you hit on a couple of things that I had been thinking about. The slow part of it is probably the most misunderstood. What I tend to explain to a novice or a curious person is, the more you slow Tai Chi down, it gets closer to the benefits of something like yoga. Although with yoga, you will hold a stance, and with Tai Chi, you're constantly moving between stances. And that in itself adds a completely different dimension to it, right? And I've tried to slow down, like I do the yang long form. And the goal for that is to be able to slow it down. That one form will take 1 hour to finish. And I've, at my best, have done 40 minutes, and it's excruciating. Not just the physical movement, but the concentration, because of it's, and that's, I think probably the hardest thing for anyone is to focus your intention, on a sustained basis for that long a period while you're moving slow. And we talk about the exercise part of it being the physical body, but it is very much a mental exercise as well. And can you fully focus your concentration in a slow moving sequence? It's really so much harder than most people would think.
Yeah, it reminds me, I don't know if you remember back 2020 and 2021 when COVID hit, and I host a so-called free Tai Chi lesson. We live stream to the world, and you were so generous with your time and your knowledge, and you can many times to teach, and I will follow you. Yes, and you were doing very slow, and sometimes it's very slow. And when your legs are burning, and trust me, you cannot really focus on the mental part anymore, right? And I think I stated to you, I felt it was very meditative because I really have to sum up all my mental faculty and everything, and to be focused. So I'm not saying physically being challenged, and so mentally I was challenged when I follow you.
Yeah, and I remember, us going through that, which was a wonderful thing that you did, by the way. But I have realized that moving at a slow tempo, where our bodies are physically relaxed, does in fact relax the mind. And so, tell me, I'm sure you've heard this a million times when people say, I would do Tai Chi, but I just can't go that slow. My life is fast, I'm fast paced. And what I would argue is that if everything in your life is really fast paced, you probably need this a lot more than you would actually think.
Oh, you are so true. You are
right?
so true.
Yeah, it counterbalances the speed at which everything else is swirling around us. And so, the analogy that came to mind was, we talk about, we're talking a lot about tempo or speed of exercise, which is really rate of motion. And so, the analogy that we can use for motion is maybe travel. So let's say we were traveling between two destinations, and we travel by train. Well, by train, everything blurs by for the most part, right? Unless you're stopping. So you don't really see much on a train. If we were in a car, we might be more aware, but only defensively. We want to make sure that no one crashes into us. If we travel by bicycle, which is my favorite, we can look around a little bit more and take things in. But we still have to keep our eye on the road. If we walk, now we can see everything around us. And so slowing down increases our awareness. And I would say that for most people that are constantly in that fast mode, exercise or otherwise, may not necessarily be aware of everything that's going on. And inherent to that is perception of the situation, and then the choices you're making for that situation. So for me, I found that when I slow down in my practice and I relax my thinking and I become much more aware of what's going on, I tend to perceive things that other people aren't perceiving. And it's not magic. Those things are there for everyone to see, but they're just going too fast. And by slowing down and understanding what's around, I can identify it and I can make a choice. And I feel that in most cases, I'm making a choice that is better than if I had blown by it and made, a snap decision.
That's so profound, and I think it's become more and more difficult for people to slow down, and in today's world, and everything is nanosecond, right? We wanted instant gratification. We always thought faster is better, but how should I say? Yeah, I still want my phone responding immediately, but at the same time, and we constantly go through life like that, and we miss a lot, and also probably it's not very good for our brain and for our spiritual enrichment. Do you agree?
I 100% agree. And one of the things that I included in Inner Secrets was, some reading I had done in the book, The Body Electric. And they were talking about the different stages of brain activity. And I think there were 4. I'd have to look at it, but when you wake up in the morning, you're at a certain level of brain activity, and then you escalate up, and then you have your maximum activity. And what occurred to me is that two things. First, I think most people get out of bed and they try to go right to that top level of activity. So they're drinking coffee and watching the news and doing all this stuff, and they're getting the brain stimulated and really moving, very quickly escalating through these different stages. And then at night, maybe work all day, come home, do the bills, watch television, which a lot of times the television has gratuitous sex or violence, heavy drama, usually medical shows, police shows, fireman shows. There's all the political shows that are really have been front and center. And so they watch all of this and then they go, okay, now it's time for bed. And now I've got to try to, descend through, 3 levels of brain activity to actually get to sleep. And how many people are suffering from insomnia and anxiety? And I believe that a lot of this is because they don't have a method by which they can modulate their brain activity. And the question that I was asking in Inner Secrets was, if there's a person who may be depressed, low brain activity, and I'm not a scientist, so I don't know the answer to this, but if there's a person who has low brain activity and is depressed, is it possible that something like Tai Chi can increase that gradually and they can reach a balance point? Or the person who's anxious, now we can moderate and learn how to moderate that down. I've actually worked a lot with people who have anxiety problems for a variety of reasons. And a lot of what I have learned through Tai Chi and Qigong have been excellent ways to get them to kind of bring it back under control and be happy again.
Yeah, recently I have read, when I say recently, this year, I have read quite a lot of books regarding the mind body, and from the Western medicine perspective, and also from the psychology perspective. And a lot of people have chronic pains, and then also say fibromyalgia, and then acid reflux. A lot is not physically they have any problem. Is the mental side and effect. And so there's a book by Dr. Alan Gordon, and he's a psychiatrist or psychologist. And he talked about one of his patients. And because, every day when she wakes up, she already answering email messages on her phone and so forth. And that's the lifestyle most people have. And then she was suffering from chronic pains. And and then Dr. Howard Schubner and suggests people to use meditation to help themselves to overcome those issues. And as you know, and the Tai Chi Chuan is mind body exercise, and it has a meditation component, especially the way you have us do it. It's really, it's meditative, and we can really sense our body and our emotion and everything. So I think what you just said makes perfect sense. Yeah.
And Violet, one of the things that I had been thinking of is at least the way I learned and the way I train, and which I think also may have follows the historical progression of our art, which is we start typically with still meditation, could be sitting meditation, and this is something that is become much more accepted in Western society, and certainly more people are using still meditation. And then from there, what do you do? I think still meditation is is fantastic and it's valuable, but I don't think it has to stop there. So, for us, the next level of training then is the post stance, right? And learning how to now stand up and hold fixed positions, which, I've told people that, I do a set, yeah, I do a set of, I think it's 9 positions that I had learned. And, what I tell them is this is one of the oldest exercises. It's one of the simplest, but it's also one of the hardest because you really don't do anything but hold this position for a couple of minutes.
Wow.
And
Maybe
it's very demanding.
another time, and when
Yeah,
you have the you look at your calendar. I know your calendar is pretty full. You find
yeah,
time, and then maybe you can teach us all these 9
yeah,
different
sure.
meditations and
Yeah,
the standing pose. In your book, you talk about your teacher and when he first learned the art, and his teacher, Grandmaster Chen Taisan, made him just standing for an hour and for quite some time, right? Before
yeah,
uh, he taught your teacher anything.
yes.
So I guess that's very important. However, I think nowadays we have everybody stand up for an hour, and I'm going to lose a student, and
Yeah,
because everybody wants everything fast.
that's exactly right. And for me, I couldn't get my black sash until I could hold that horse stance for an hour. So he put it on the back end, because you're right. You could never, keep your students that way. In his particular case, his Sifu um, was Sifu Chan Tai San. He really wasn't interested in teaching anymore. So he was like, well, if you really want to learn, you're going to do this. And so that's what my Sifu did. He earned it. Now, we always thought it's like the old Kung Fu movies, right? Where you're going to be tested. And that was certainly part of it. But at the same time, I think that he, was aligning the nervous system, because, and I was just teaching somebody this yesterday. And one of the things that I was saying was that because we're working, some form of a low stance where we're engaging the large leg muscles, and because we're sustaining the arms, so we're using the large back muscles, it is triggering our brain and physiology now to adapt to what is considered activity, right? And so the heart starts to pump, the lungs start to open up, the blood starts to flow. So we're getting aerobic and we're getting circulatory activity. We're certainly building the musculature in our back and our legs, right? But because we're not doing anything that's putting stress on the body in a real way, our body is not sending stress signals to the brain, which is really important because it's teaching calmness while the body is experiencing some level of exertion. And so it's training the brain like, okay, the body's exerting itself, but there's no danger here. Everything's cool. We're going to just keep
Excellent.
doing this, right?
Yeah.
And over time. So we do that and then move to Tai Chi Chuan, right? Where now we're going to start adding movement, but we've already done sitting meditation, we've done post meditation, and now we're adding the movement, but the meditation's already in place. And then maybe eventually we get into weapons and sparring and push hands and all those other things. But if we do that and we've trained up with that type of sequence, when as we're increasing the pressure of encounters, let's say push hands, and then maybe eventually sparring, the composure stays. And so we're able to respond to pressure situations in a more tempered way. And, to me, I can't think of any other exercise that would ever bring us to that point.
Yeah, I think you explained it so well. And one time I was attending some kind of function. A person sit right next to me, and I don't know how the conversation got there. And the person was saying, "Well, Tai Chi Chuan moves so slow, you cannot sweat. And what kind of exercise is that?" And and I just say, there is one things we do in Tai Chi Chuan is called 站桩 or standing pose. I have no physical movement outside, but I feel, I'm kind of perspiring a little bit, beating. I'm not dripping wet, but I can feel, I'm actually, and perspiring. And she said, really, that's strange.
Yeah.
but I guess you have to do it to experience it and then to see that happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I would add to that, I'm in New York and winter is coming, and we'll be outside at 6 a.m. in the morning when the sun hasn't come up and the air is still cold. And if I've worked out properly, I may not be dripping with sweat, but certainly my core temperature is up. And I can perspire a little bit before I finish. So yeah, I think that's a part of Tai Chi that just nobody realizes exists in it. And the other thing is that I think that two things I notice. First, Tai Chi is up against the advertising moguls who always say those two words, when they're selling their exercise machines for their fitness course, which is it's fast and it's easy. And a lot of people want fast and easy forms of exercise, which this isn't, right? We have to make an investment of time. We have to commit ourselves over pretty much a long arc of time to achieve a master level at the art. But I like doing things like that. I don't, anything that's fast and easy for me is not interesting. I never see any real value of it. I tend to do things like write books that take 5 years because at the end of it, I think that the payoff is more meaningful. And Tai Chi would certainly fall into that category.
Yes. Well, I met some friends. We had some kind of reunion, and one of the friends, many were saying, "Well, Tai Chi is good. They like it." And the same say, "But it's so hard to remember." And one of them just say, "Can you make Tai Chi really simple?" And so I don't really have to remember. I don't have to think. So because we were friends, we have been friends for a long time. So I said, can I be very honest with you? If I made it too easy for you, and the health benefit will be compromised. Yeah, because
I agree.
it's a mind body exercise. You have to engage your brain. When we are doing the Tai Chi Chuan, it is not just a physical um, exercise. A lot is the brain exercise. And I like how you put it, the way you talk about so-called yin and yang in the book, in this chapter. And then maybe you can elaborate more. You say yang is the physical part, the yin is the other one, and actually we should use yin to help the yang. Can you just elaborate that a little bit more
Yeah,
for
I think
us?
it was. I think that was talking about intention or spirit, um, and then the physical part of it. And I think that the story I was telling was that there was a time in Chinese history where they were teaching Tai Chi strictly as physical movement without intention and without engaging the brain. And It's good for moving the body and getting the breath work and, getting the circulatory system. But it's not complete by doing that. That the intention is there. And I think a lot of people, when you say intention, may not necessarily know what I mean by that. So I was on a gig, playing with a band recently and explaining to somebody who's a very muscular person. And I was saying, okay, if you were to grab that glass of water that you're drinking, your brain has to use intention to move your arm to take the glass of water. Okay, so we can all do that. What Tai Chi does is it learns, it really increases that level of intention to a point of power. And what I've noticed is that, in the West, the most accepted form of working out is working on the muscles. And we need to do that, but we will lose muscle mass as we get older. And so what we really need at that point is intention. We need to be able to direct our energy through our hands to grab, to walk, or any kind of physical activity that we want to do. I notice that sometimes there are musicians that are playing and as they get older, they have to watch their hands more. If they're playing guitar, let's say, right? They have to watch what the hands are doing because the connection from the brain to the hand is not as strong. And so, yeah. So we don't want that, right? We want to have the intention strong enough so that as we're elderly, if we have to push open a heavy door or lift a heavy box, or anything like that, that even if we don't necessarily have a lot of muscle, the brain will move the body in a way that's efficient, will maximize the power that we have, and move the mass that is before us. So, when we talk about exercise, maybe just in this short time, we're covering so many dimensions of what exercise is. If I pass a like an exercise gym, especially if they have the big plate glass windows and you see everybody on the treadmills and everything, what are they doing? They're watching TV. And so, clearly they're not.
It's mindless. It's mindless. The mind somewhere else, not with the body.
Yeah. It's they're like zombies, like Walking Dead type of thing, because I understand why that is, because, treadmills are boring, right? And you're just walking and going nowhere. So you're just really working the body on that. But by doing that and concentrating on something else, that mind-body connection is coming further and further apart. And the communication between the mind and the body that gap is increasing. And I would think that over a long period of time, that will have some consequence.
Oh, yes. And there was one person I know of, and when he was in his late 80s and then early 90s maybe, and he was diagnosed with Parkinson. Let me retract a little bit, but a few years earlier than that, he already sensed there's something different. But the doctor, test him and then do all kinds of strength tests or whatever. And it seems he was very strong because he was always exercise for his life. But he knew something was not right, the connection. And he feels funny. But the doctor could not find out. what he was saying. And then until I think maybe 2-3 years later, he was diagnosed with Parkinson. Yeah. So again, it's quite. I hate to use the word interesting, but it's also interesting because it's how the brain and connect with the rest of the body.
Oh, I lost my audio.
Yeah, I can hear you well. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. And the mind and body actually connect very well. And recently I wrote an article and I cited a scientific study and how we can actually just using the mind to grow the muscle. So with Tai Chi practice, and we constantly, like you say, we're projecting the energy and we're projecting what we're doing it, and they really maintaining, if it's not building new one. But and I think sometimes we are building new ones, but at least we are keep connecting
Right.
those channels. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
very good.
As the body is creating new cells, as we know, right, we're constantly, we have old cells dying and new cells being created. And I really, feel that if those new cells are created with more nutrients, oxygen, richer blood, that those cells are actually, the quality of those cells are actually better, right? And over time, we're improving ourselves on a cellular level, which has lasting impact, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very true. So I heard you published another book. Is that true?
Yes. Yes.
That's great. Congratulations.
Yeah. So, again, thinking about the student who, actually I have it here, thinking about the student who has never tried Tai Chi before. And now, tell me this, how many times do you have students who start and there are some that immediately it clicks and it feels good and they like it, but there are probably just as many, if or more, who they don't get it. And some might stick around and later on, come back to us and say, yeah, I love it now, but in the beginning I had no idea why you were doing this. Or they don't stick around and they don't give it enough time. And so I've had that with students, and I think that I needed to find a way to remedy that. And so one of the things I thought is that as we learn things, we need time to reflect on them, to cultivate them, and then refine them. And so what I did was I wrote this new book, which is a companion to Inner Secrets.
Oh, wonderful.
Meditations on the Principles of Tai Chi. And what this is a journal that a new student can use for their first 12 weeks of training. And
very interesting.
Yes, and I'll send you a copy and or two so that you can look at it and maybe even use it with a student, and then would love to get your feedback. But what I've noticed is that while I was doing this with a new student, each week there's a different principle. So, for instance, the first principle is Wuji, no extremes. And so there's a short explanation of that, and it allows the teacher to now touch upon this during the class. But then during the week, the student has questions for each day of the week that they can journal and reflect on while they're practicing this principle until the next class. And so as they progress, they're learning different things. They're learning the concepts, and they're trying to maybe understand how these things can, how these other things can be used in their life beyond the dojo.
Yes.
And so it's my hope that at the end of 12 weeks,
Excellent.
they're educated, more motivated, that they have a more holistic understanding. And I think that this would be, excuse me, this would be a great tool for teachers who do want to, build their classes and hopefully retain more students.
Excellent. I'm really looking forward to reading your new book, and excellent. And it's amazing, you have a full-time job, and then you play drum and with bands, and on weekends and nights, and then you still and you teach also. And you still have time to write books. And yes, you mentioned that each of your books will take a long time. And the first book, 5 years. I don't know how long it took for you to write the second book, but it's amazing. You have so much energy, and you can do so many things. And even though you practice very slow movement called Tai Chi. But you actually do more.
Right. Exactly. Maybe because I do this and I haven't stressed the body, I'm not tired, right? It's only energy. One of the things that we hadn't touched upon, and there are two things that I want to make sure that we touch upon, because hopefully this is something that will be seen by a broader audience, and people who don't practice Tai Chi, but might practice other things and maybe considering Tai Chi. There's two things that I always try to share with people. Number one is that you can train for musculature, which is great, but that Tai Chi really exercises the internal organs, which need to function optimally to give us truly great health, that they are detoxing our body, and that they are processing our blood, and all the things that we need to have working in proper order to truly be healthy. You don't really see a lot of people dying from muscle failure, right? Unless it's like muscular dystrophy. But most people die of organ failure. But everybody trains the musculature, but they don't really train the organs. And I would submit to anyone who's really interested in their health to check out Tai Chi for that. And then the other thing, and I really wanted to talk to you about this, and I want to get your thoughts on this. This is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. When we're born and we're like infants, we're soft and pliable, right? You see babies fall on the floor. They don't get hurt, right? They're very fluid, they're very supple. And then as we become, young, but maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, up until we're 15, 20 years old, we might train in sports that is designed to toughen up the body. It's going to challenge us, it's going to toughen up the body, which we need to do. But when we hit maybe 50, 55, 60, or later than that, should you still be doing those exercises? My thought is we more than ever need to become pliable and supple again, not straining the body, because as we know, like using the tree analogy, if the branches get stiff and brittle, they snap, they break. And certainly as we age, the body starts to feel a little stiffer. We hear people talk about that all the time. And so to me, it seems that maybe moving away from sports or exercises that are really beating up the body, which strengthens the body when you're a kid, but it beats up the body when you're older, might not be a great
may not be wise. And it's just how do we change people's mindset And I did a survey last year, and the survey was sent out to more than 10,000 people, and the return rate was not bad. I think we had about like 10%, and that's pretty high when you do a survey nowadays. And the how should I say? Most people thought, at least Tai Chi Chuan was portrayed by the media. It was old people exercise, and it's a misfortune. And but actually, we all know you practice at a very young age, and it's really good for the body. It can build the muscles, it can build the ligaments and the tendons, and also help with the internal organs. And not to mention, we don't have to put our body through the grinder and beat up our body, as you said, and then become healthy. I actually have met a young person before, and the person was in his 20s, and he has a big bicep and tricep, and not just 6 packs, 8 packs, 8 packs. So looks pretty cool, right? Really buff. And so I was saying, not to the person in the face, but I was talking to someone else. I say, he doesn't look healthy to me. And guess what? A week later, the person got shingles in the 20s and got a shingles. That's old person's immune problem, right? And they have shingles. And so a lot of time, I think in our culture, we all think, if somebody's buff and then whatever, and they're strong, they're healthy. They may be strong, but they're not necessarily healthy. And then these are two separate issues. And I like it how you say that in the book, and you say, the difference between so-called the power and the strength and the health, and versus, strictly the outside, how a person look. And but it is hard for people to really understand it.
And you just reminded me, because there is an appendix in Inner Secrets about Tai Chi and sports, and one of the things I found through some research was that there were football teams like the San Francisco 49ers, and I think the New York Jets, and maybe the Oilers, that were using Tai Chi to cross-train in football. And I've trained athletes that were hockey players, golfers, and baseball players because, like brush knee technique is, the mechanics are almost identical to pitching in baseball. So, I don't think, it needs to necessarily be exclusive or one or the other. It could be both. I think it certainly would enhance it. And, a lot of people may not realize that, this system was created before there was any healthcare plans. And, and it's one of the reasons why, I call it a system of survival for a number of reasons, but that was certainly one of them. And if you consider the state of our healthcare system, the costs, the medications, all those things, going to a Tai Chi class is cheaper than a copay. And so why not give it a shot?
It's a lot more fun, right? And hopefully people will realize that. And yes, and I know a very famous dance troupe in Taiwan, and called Cloud Gates. They train dancers to do Tai Chi, because dancers need to do a lot of extreme movements, and actually it's very harmful for the body. So So they take Tai Chi
That's
lesson. Yeah. And I know another a very famous dancer in France, and he is also a Tai Chi instructor because he understands and how Tai Chi Chuan can, improve his body. And he was able to do things unbelievable with his body. And but at the same time, and when you're doing these extreme movements, it could be harmful. Yeah.
Yes, it has helped my drumming tremendously.
You mean Tai Chi Chuan help you with your drumming?
Yeah,
Oh,
it is.
okay.
And so, we talk about the intention piece of it. Drummers actually, if I hold a drumstick, right? Drummers tend to only think about the hand moving, but now you practice saber and sword, so I know, right? You want to
Yes, I
move the
do.
chi up the sword. So in drumming, we're learning. I've learned to move the chi here.
Oh, wow. To the tip.
Completely different than what drummers do. And also the way I move my hands, like we do the Tai Chi opening, that you put a drumstick in there, and now there's a flow to the motion, which improves the quality of the sound, which improves the quality of the music.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I really need to attend one of your concert and next time when I get to New York.
Yeah, when you come back.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for spending your very valuable time and with us today. And so anyone, and if you have questions for Sifu Bill Donnelly, and you can find his contact information below the screen, below the video. And I'm pretty sure he will be able to help you with your question, right? Bill, I'm sorry I did not get your consent before I say that.
That's quite all right. No, I'd be happy to speak with anybody who has a real interest in this.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to your second book. Okay.
Good.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
And
all right.
bye.